Well, not as many comics for me to talk about this week, but all three of them are moving their respective series a little closer toward the direction that I would, I think, enjoy. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Warning now, full spoilers for everything I talk about. This is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on April 2nd, 2024, originally published March 5th, 2024. First from those is Shazam number 9. Now, I had checked out of this series because I just wasn't into the whole anthropomorphic talking animals thing. Now that Mark Waid is still writing this book, but now that that arc is over, and I was like, okay, I think there are no talking Tyrannosaurus Rexes in sight. Let's dip into this, see if I can, appreciate it. I did. This seemed to be a one-shot issue just focused on the captain's interaction with the Creeper, and I thought it was fairly enjoyable. I still wonder about this whole thing of trying to call Shazam, or as I will always think of him, Captain Marvel, the Captain. When they introduced this idea, it felt to me like, are we starting the journey back to calling him Captain Marvel? Is something going on behind the scenes legally between DC and Marvel where they're reclaiming that title? Because they did have a character, well, at least whatever the comic book company, I keep wanting to say Fawcett, but Fawcett's the name of the city that he's from. But Captain Marvel, now owned by DC, was being published long before the Captain Marvel of Marvel Comics. In fact, he might have even been being published before there was a Marvel Comics. But because of some weird legal stuff, Marvel somehow ends up in a place where they have the rights to calling someone Captain Marvel, and DC does not, even though this character existed well before Marvel's same named character. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't seem like we're going to call him Captain Marvel anytime soon. And so it feels weird to keep calling him the Captain. It feels forced and strange and like a half measure. I would almost rather they doubled down on just calling him Shazam. But anyway, that's a side issue. I think I'll probably check out at least one more issue of Shazam, see if they continue to keep talking animals out of sight, as that being a pet peeve of mine, but as soon as they come back, I'll probably be out again. Moving on then, Birds of Prey, number 7. I had been away from this book because it just... the art style that you can see on the cover, I think, is the artist that had done the first 6 issues, and that combined with the coloring style, which employed this old school, I don't know if it was like watercolors, or if you look at old comics from like the 70s, from the 80s, they have a more primitive look to their coloring because of the way it was done. You see colors bleeding into others, and it just has a messier look, sometimes kind of a blurry look if there's imperfections in the process. And the coloring for Birds of Prey since issue 1 has employed this kind of retro style that I can see maybe some people being into, but I'm not. For me, I'm just like, well, coloring has advanced and it looks a lot better today. Why make it look worse on purpose? It's the same reason that I can't stand Minecraft. I'm just like, why? Why do we make a game that looks like this? I understand Minecraft, why it does it. That's a different story. But anyway, I don't feel any need to go back to it here, apart from appealing to that particular aesthetic, which I'm not into. That said, I did start appreciating the art style itself, the pencils themselves, rather than having that more... I'm going to get crap for saying this from Jack Kirby fans, but like that Jack Kirby kind of style that looks like 60s comic book art that just is not as detailed and sophisticated as modern comic book pencils. I'm glad they seem to have a different artist or a different artistic style starting with issue 7 in terms of the pencils and the inks. The coloring is still a turnoff for me, but I think this is a step in a better direction. Of course, for my tastes. I also do appreciate the writing in this book and just kind of the different personalities between the members of the Birds of Prey team. But one way in which this issue is not seemingly taking the series in a good direction is kind of like the final page, which has me scratching my head a little bit. They are preparing to go undercover, and I guess part of that is going to involve like a fashion show or fashion environment or something like that. And so part of them going quote unquote undercover is to basically put on lingerie and walk out on a runway. And there are references as they are getting dressed to Black Canary being uncomfortable with what she's being asked to wear. And then there's references to like, well, but you normally wear basically a bathing suit. She's like, but I wear a jacket with it. Yeah, but what about your fishnet stockings? That's not supposed to be sexy, you know? So there's this almost meta level acknowledgement of the intended sex appeal of the costume design that Black Canary traditionally has. And when I saw the final page with them, you know, in their lingerie on a runway, being played up for their sex appeal, I wondered to myself, okay, well, I think this book has done well, both with male and female readers, but I think with female readers, it's significantly gotten a female following over the years in previous incarnations. So why this sort of objectification? Well, I think there is a line of thinking. I almost said a school of thought, but I think that maybe elevates it a little too much. But there is a way of seeing things that would suggest that, well, women who quote unquote own their sexuality are empowered by it, you know, and that is like that's somehow different from them objectifying themselves on purpose. And while I can see that a woman could use her sexuality, of course, to gain control, to manipulate, of course, that's a thing that's been done, you know, throughout the centuries. It still results in that woman being objectified and the encouragement for the men who see that to further just continue objectifying women in their minds in other situations in their lives. So a woman using sexuality to kind of get what she wants, I can see the argument of it having a short-term sense of power that it gives them, but it's very short-sighted because it does long-term damage to their own value in the eyes of men and the value of women in general in the eyes of men who would succumb to being manipulated by purely sexual wiles or whatever. And then as this is the splash page, there's a curious comment in the bottom right, acting as the tease for the next issue. It says, next, well, they're already in their underwear. What else could you possibly want? Which makes me wonder, okay, so how much of that is a joke? How much of that is kind of a half joke? What kind of audience are they really trying to appeal to here? And on what basis are they trying to appeal to them? I've been catching up, as I have the time, with the classic Gail Simone written Birds of Prey series. And back then I noticed, you know, I see also some sexualizing of the characters, some objectifying of the characters. But I assumed that was maybe more of a product of its time, being in like the mid 2000s, and I would have expected something a little bit different today. So it's interesting to see this move being made in the current Birds of Prey series. And I bring this up not to like, you know, wag a finger or anything like that, but I think that it is a springboard for a worthwhile topic for us to think about, and as organic opportunities arise, to talk about with others. Finally, Batman 145, called Dark Prisons Part 1, but this is not like a story that's a good entry point. Chip Zdarsky, I believe is how you say the name of the writer on this run of Batman for a while now. He had the whole thing with Failsafe and the Batman of Zur-Anar, and those two entities kind of getting combined into one version of Failsafe. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, well, yeah, it's not a good place to jump in. On top of that, there's stuff about the Red Hood and Batman traveling into alternate dimensions and getting a replacement robotic hand now. Then we had this, what was it, a 3-issue story arc? Was it a full 4 that was Joker, like a retelling of Joker's origin story? So yeah, things are really, that's right. And in the background, there's Vandal Savage taking over Wayne Manor, which temporarily has been suspended as now Failsafe has retaken the manor. There's just a lot of moving pieces in what's been going on in Zdarsky's run for the last, year or so, I feel like. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. As we get back into the present day, we're out of the Joker origin story. I do see now how the retelling of Joker's origin story as him being potentially trained by the same guy that trained Batman to partition his mind, which resulted ultimately in the creation of the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. I see how going to that part of Joker's history was relevant as we come now into the present day and see how Joker is maybe going to help Batman defeat Zur-En-Arrh, because potentially Joker understands this training, and that would in some way help him to break or take on Failsafe in the same way that he took on and in one sense broke Batman. And, you know, Batman and Joker really have their work cut out for them, because Failsafe is out impersonating Batman and possibly fooling at least some of Batman's surrounding cast, starting maybe with Damian, as he is able to, having a copy of all of Bruce's memories, share intimate details of their life together, of their relationship as father and son, very private moments that they've shared together. He's able to seemingly convince Damian that he is in fact Bruce Wayne, but having been hurt so badly, he had to upload, he says, his consciousness into this robotic body. And that's something that I have talked about before in reacting to the Cyborg comic, and I've talked about why this idea of uploading our consciousness will never work, because we're not really moving our consciousness. Even if we assume that naturalism is true, we are making a copy that is different from the existing copy, and then for that copy to live on while we are deleted or die or whatever, doesn't mean that we live on. We've just created, even on an atheistic worldview, a second version of ourselves. So that is not a path to immortality. And so for this being, the failsafe, to claim, even if it quote unquote believes, which I don't think it does, that it is Batman, well, actually maybe it does, we're still, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I think we might see that validated, that view that, like, okay, a copy of someone's memories is not the same as the person themselves. Because that's a question that the supporting cast is asking. Some of them are kind of like, maybe it is. But I think all this is going to lead, certainly, to a point where it's revealed, no, this is not actually Bruce. Even if it theoretically is a perfect copy of all of his memories, it is not Bruce. So what's going to be interesting to see is on what basis will they conclude that Failsafe is not actually Bruce? Will it be because he's an imperfect copy, and that will be the justification? Or will the concept of an immaterial component that is essential to human beings be brought into the story? Will someone say, you don't have Bruce's soul? I don't know. But I think that this story really is setting itself up to kind of get into that territory and make some comments. So yeah, I'm interested in where the Batman story is going to go, even as it's a little bit too busy for my tastes. I have been enjoying it for the most part, and I can't help but suspect that we are kind of going to start bringing things back into a more narrow focus, which I think would be better for me. My ring selection for this week is the blue ring, which signifies the emotion of hope, and that is what I'm feeling about all three of these, even though like Shazam and Birds of Prey are not like, oh my gosh, these are definitely going to be for me now. They are both making steps away from what I kind of disliked about them in a direction that's a little bit more suiting to my taste. And likewise, I can't help but think with Batman, things are kind of starting into a better direction. So I'm not really loving any of these books. Batman certainly more than the other two, but I am feeling that there's reason to hope that I might enjoy these books more and more going forward. Anyway, okay, I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, I would love to get your reactions to these comics, to anything else that came out from DC recently that maybe I haven't talked about. You can leave those in the comments below. And I would love it if you would check out christiangeekcentral.com. We've got a ton more content there that I hope you will check out as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.